Hello, humans. I have two cases for you today from a Song Dynasty doctor named Qián Yǐ. He wrote the first pediatric book in China. And so how do you pronounce it? 小儿葯证直诀, something like that. I know my pronunciation is bad. Anyway, let's see a couple cases by him. Before though, a little bit of information. You can see his dates. So almost 1,000 years ago. And one of the things he's famous for, besides being a pediatric doctor, was he is the person who first wrote Lu Wei Di Huang Wan. So this is a pretty famous formula. Probably you know that there's Ba Wei Di Huang Wan, or it's also called Shen Qi Wan, which came from Jingui Yaolui, or actually from Jingui Yaolui. Sorry. And that formula has 8 ingredients, and it's to, people today say it's to supplement kidney yang, but actually it's called kidney qi pill, Shen Qi Wan. And it was kind of written as a balanced pill for the kidneys. But now we move forward, 800 years from when Shen Qi Wan was written, and Qián Yǐ is treating children, and children are hot, children are young, children run high fevers, children run around and move a lot. They're so young. And so he saw some children definitely needed help in their kidneys, but he thought Shen Qi Wan was too hot for children, so he took out the Fuzi and the Rogui. And now we have Lu Wei Di Huang Wan. But it's kind of ironic that today that formula is mostly given to older people, and today people say that Shen Qi Wan is for yang deficiency and Lu Wei Di Huang Wan is for yin deficiency, but actually Lu Wei Di Huang Wan is kind of an unbalanced Shen Qi Wan, and so Jingfeng doctors, classical doctors, really aren't very fond of this formula for the most part, unless you're using it for children. Anyway, so his book has 23 case studies in it. There are 3 volumes. In the first volume is all the theory about children and what diseases they have and so forth. And it will mention herbal formulas for each different condition. And then the last volume has the ingredients and the instructions for preparing all the herbal formulas. But the middle volume has 23 case studies. And so I have 2 case studies here from that book. So some government official named Mr. Li had an 8-year-old grandson, and the kid was sick with cough and then chest fullness and shortness of breath. So he called a doctor. The doctor said, "Oh, your grandchild has heat in the lungs." They say lung channel, but what they really mean is the lungs. Just like when we're talking about entering channel on, for herbs, it really most of the time means, even though it says channel, it means the organ most of the time. So this is just how they talk back then. So anyway, he says there's heat in the lung channel, and treated him with a couple doses each of Zhuye tang. So Zhuye is bamboo leaf, and Niuhuang gao. And Niuhuang is that, what is it, a gallstone of an ox or a cow? And both of these are pretty cold formulas and so forth. So in 3 days, the child was also now panting and gasping for breath. It got a lot worse. So they called in Qián Yǐ, and the other doctor somehow is still there. This is something I've gotten from ancient case studies, is often the family calls a bunch of doctors, and each doctor says, oh, I think we should do this. And the next doctor says, no, I think we should do that, and so forth. And then the doctors are all arguing with each other and competing, and the family chooses the doctor that they think is the best. So Qián Yǐ says, this child has lung qi deficiency. Sorry, so do I. No, anyway, in addition, they're cold evils. So he's got qi deficiency. He's also got cold evils. And so the deficiency and the cold are making panting and chest fullness. We should supplement the lungs and the spleen. Don't let him take any cooling herbs. But Li, the grandfather, says, hey, this doctor over here, he's already used these two formulas. And Qian says, why did he do that? And the doctor, who's still there, says to get rid of the heat and the saliva. Saliva is, they didn't actually use the word phlegm at this time very much. It existed, but more often they're like case studies from this time period where they use saliva. I have something about that somewhere, so hold on and we'll talk about that. But this is basically meaning phlegm. So the doctor said to get rid of the phlegm and the heat. And Qián Yǐ says, how do you take this condition as heat? And the other doctor says, well, he had heat in the lung channel that made cough. The cough lasted for a long time, didn't get, taken care of. And so now that made phlegm. That's what the other doctor said. Here is the little note about that. As I said, in this time period, the word phlegm was not a common term. And so this saliva, or xian, which is the fluid of the spleen, there's also tuo, which is the fluid of the kidneys, but this is the fluid of the spleen, and you might know that phlegm is made by the spleen. So, these are two pathological fluids that belong to the spleen. Well, saliva can be non-pathological. Of course, we need it for eating and digestion, but in this context, he's talking about pathology, like an abundance of this xian, this saliva. So here you can just substitute the idea of phlegm for saliva. Anyway, so but Jenny said, he's got lung qi deficiency, and it comes from wind and cold. Where's the heat? How do you see heat in this? And in addition, even if you call this lung heat, why didn't you treat the lungs? On the contrary, you treated the heart. Those two formulas you gave are medicines to treat the heart, not even to treat the lungs. So he got the cold heat wrong. He got the organ wrong. Like the previous doctor just made the patient worse. And so the doctor looked ashamed, and she hadn't treated the child, and the child recovered. So that's a thing you find in case studies all the time. The doctor who wrote the case study portrays all the other doctors as like not knowing what they're doing and giving the wrong treatment. And now here I come in and save the day. Yay. So Qián Yǐ is, bragging about how he's better than all the other doctors. Actually, it seems that Qián Yǐ didn't write this himself, but a fan of his wrote it. So he's not really bragging about himself. His fan is bragging about him. Anyway, whatever. I've got one more little case. The son of official Wang, it probably says what kind of government official he was, but that's hard to translate, and who cares? He's a government official. His son was 5 years old, and he became ill with eyes staring straight ahead, and he stopped eating. That eyes staring straight ahead is like you wave your hands in front of their face and they're unresponsive. So they're not fully unconscious. Their eyes are open, but they're not responding to human activity outside of them. So he also stopped eating. Someone said an evil spirit possessed him and did this to him. So they requested a shaman a wu to invoke the gods and to burn papers. So they'd burn talismans, and sometimes they'd, you know, put them in water, the ash after it's burnt, put it in water and stir it up and make the patient drink it. And or maybe they were burning offerings, doesn't really say, but they were doing some kind of spirit thing. The child still didn't recover. So they called in Qián Yǐ, and he arrived and he said, "Hey, this is a disease of the organs. What use is praying to the gods?" And so Qian gave them Shègan, that's some kind of liver draining pill, and the patient recovered. So one thing, I do talk about ghosts and spirits sometimes, and I have cases where there's weird stuff going on. But a lot of the old doctors either didn't seem to believe in it, or they weren't about to call every strange case spirit possession. So common folks may have worried a lot about spirit possession, but doctors often were not into using that as a explanation for diseases. So we'll see this kind of idea come up here and there. Okay, that's my case for the time being. Thanks for listening.